Today's daf is daf nun. We are going to begin on nun amud beis by the two dots. The line starts with lahadodi ein meitzian la'achilas peris. The Mishnah said ein meitzian la'achilas peris. The Beis Din does not put a lien on nechasim mishubadim that had been sold to a third party for achilas peris, for the consumption of produce. In other words, if a person appropriated a field and sold it, and the buyer now worked the land, he proved it, and he grew fruit on there, and then the owner came and took back his field together with the produce, so the buyer cannot collect the value of the produce from the property that the robber sold to another person. So the Gemara, my time, what's the reason? The reason is, Ula says, this is because the produce is not written in the actual star. The obligation of a seller to reimburse the buyer of the field he sells to him is repossessed by prior owner or creditor is dependent upon the obligation recorded in the shtar. So his chayvus of reimbursement with regard to the produce is therefore treated like a loan, like a milva alpeh, which you know, a milva alpeh does not have a koil, and therefore you cannot collect the loan. There's no way to know about it at the time of the purchase. So now Abba said to Ula, but isn't the mozin of the woman and the bonis the command ksividami? Even isn't it when a person has to sustain his wife and daughter, is that considered as if they were written? Even though it doesn't explicitly state it in the ksuba, it's as if it was written, and a person is mechuyev uktani. And yet, what does the Mishnah say? Ein meitzin. Payment of the sustenance of a man's wife and daughters cannot be collected from the husband's chosam mishubadim. You can't say it wasn't written. So Amarleis will have said to him, there, with regards to the sustenance of a man's wife and daughter, the Chacham instituted like this from the outset. It's considered as if it was written with regard to unsold property that is still in a person's possession, so that sustenance can be collected from such property, but it's not considered as if it was written with regards to nechasim mishubadim. Because not ksuvim. Same thing. Ksuvim says no. Because the produce is not a fixed amount, it cannot be known at the outset how much produce would grow on the field or the value would be. So the Chacham instituted that any obligation that is not of a fixed amount cannot be collected from property sold to another property, because the purchaser of the lien property cannot assess the risk he is assuming of having another person come to collect compensation from the property for the loss he has suffered. So now the Gemara asks, so in order to collect from the Nechasim Mishubadim, is it necessary that the obligation both be fixed amount and also be written? If so, this would be mashma that Rabbi Chanina adds another requirement in addition to that of Rabbi Yechnan, or as long as it's katsuv, even if it's not ksuvim, it's also fine. So the Gemara says, Tashma, come, I'll bring a rayit. Itmar, we learned, so now, if a person who died and left two daughters and a son, and the first daughter went ahead and took 1/10 of the estate as her dowry, as we know, the sons are obligated to sustain the father's daughters until they become mature, become engaged, and to give them part of the estate as a dowry. As we know, daughters do not inherit what the sons do. So now, what happened? The person died and he had two daughters and a son, and now the first daughter went ahead and took 10% of her dowry, and now the second daughter did not manage to collect 1/10 of her estate of her dowry before the son died. Therefore the entire estate fell to the two daughters, who then divided between themselves, and there's a machlekes as to how they divide the estate. Now, the second daughter forfeited her 1/10 of the estate, and therefore she cannot demand that she should first receive 1/10 of the estate as her dowry, as did her sister, and that only afterwards they divide what remains of the estate equally between themselves. Chanina said to them, did they not say that it's even more so? Didn't they say that even more so that if brothers sold off property belonging to his father's estate, payment of the daughter's dowry can be taken from the buyer, but again, but payment for sustenance cannot be taken away from him. The father's estate is linked to the daughter's dowry, so that she can collect her dowry even from a third party who bought the property from the sons. She should be able to collect it from her father's estate before it's divided up between the daughters. And you say that the second daughter forfeited her 1/10 of the estate. So the Gemara draws now a maskana with regard to the question that was raised before. But isn't the dowry mentioned Rabbi Chanina? In other words, the dowry to which the orphan's daughter is entitled from her father's estate. So he says the mikatz kaitza, isn't it a fixed amount? And michtav leksivi. In other words, 1/10 of the estate, and it's not written. And nevertheless, according to Rabbi Chanina, can be taken from the chasam mishubadim that has been sold to another party. So the Gemara says, Shani Parnasa, the dowry is different. Even just the color, since it has a coil, it's like written. If the husband died, and their own daughters, even from the same woman, are sustained only from the unsold property of the state. So the Mishnah Ksubas continues. The stepdaughter is sustained even from lien property that has been sold to a third party. This is due to the fact that her legal status is like that of a creditor, and therefore she has the right to collect her debt from property formerly owned by her stepfather, her debtor. Now this is difficult according to both opinions, as the stepdaughter's sustenance is appropriated from the chasam mishubadim that has been sold to another person, despite it neither being fixed nor written. So where it says, what we're talking about, where the mother acquired the rights of the daughter's sustenance from his possession, where they performed an act of acquisition confirming the Tanai. So it's considered as though the stipulation has been written and publicized, so the property of the two daughters is liened for the stepdaughter's sustenance. The Gemara says, the daughters as well. The daughters as well should be entitled to collect their sustenance from the chasam shabbat that has been sold to a third party. Where it says, the Mishnah is referring to where the mother acquired the rights to sustenance on behalf of this one, in other words, the stepdaughter, but did not acquire the rights to sustenance on behalf of the other daughters. So the Gemara asks, my pascha, what's the reason of the decision of the Tana to record the halacha in a case where the mother acquired the right for the one but not for the other? Bas should have a b'shas kinyan, ma'ani lekinyan. With regard to the wife's daughter from her previous marriage, who was alive at the time of the act of acquisition when he gave the mother her marriage contract, so the acquisition is effective to her. Bitai, with regard to his own daughter, the le'ava b'shas kinyan, who was not alive at the time of the kinyan, le'mahani kinyan does not help. So the Gemara now asks another shayla. We're not dealing with a case where both of them were alive at the time of the acquisition, and and what are the circumstances? The korsho hadli, the case where after she was married to him and had a daughter from him, he divorced her and later remarried. At the time, an act of acquisition was performed to confirm the Tanai, as his own daughter was alive at the time. Why is this act of acquisition not effective for his own daughter's sustenance as that of the stepdaughter? So when it says alabito, rather the difference between them is as follows. With regards to his own daughter, the Tanai based in ka'achla from his state. In regards to his daughter who eats, is in other words to sustain from the state based on the stipulation of the based in. His daughter's rights to sustenance from her father's estate is part of the ksuba. So le'man le'kinyan. The king is no bas ishtei when it comes to his wife's daughter. The lav is Tanai based in kochla, which is not Tanai based in mahani lekinyan. The kinyan does help. But is the right that is rooted in two sources, both the Tanai of the court and the acquisition, less? So rather bita kinyan Tanai based in kochla, since the daughter eats based on the Tanai based in, and we say that perhaps he already gave her money during the lifetime for sustenance. Since there's a suffix, she cannot recover sustenance from the chasam shabbat, even if an act of kinyan was performed to confirm the Tanai. With regard to the stepdaughter, there is no concern that perhaps he already gave her the money while he was alive. Therefore, an act of kinyan was performed, she can collect her sustenance from the chasam shabbat that has been sold to another. Gemara continues its discussion with regards to collecting from the chasam shabbat that has been sold to a third party. Tashma, Rav Nassan says, when do we say that the chasam shabbat and the buyer worked the land and enhanced it so that he can get it? Is the shivcha shadishin, is when the purchase of the second buyer, the party who purchased the property that rightfully belonged to the robber, preceded the enhancement made by the first buyer. Aval koydom shivcha shadishin l'michri shasheni. But if the enhancement made first by the first buyer preceded the acquisition of the second buyer, then gave him nechas mishubadim, then he can collect from nechas mishubadim. Alma mishum delay kodemli. So apparently he can collect the increase in value because the enhancement did not precede the sale of the field, not because the increase of the value is not a fixed amount or written in the shtar. So where it says Tanoi b'emes machlis Tanoim Tanya mitzin achilas peres shvach rachois luns and ishav amaros b'nechoshim b'netigalelim fishing ksum. Bezin does not take away payment from the chosim shabadim has been sold to a third party for the consumption of the produce, or for the enhancement value, or of land, or for sustenance of a man's wife and daughters. Why is it tikkun elam? It's not ksuvim. So it's clear that this brayso said that the criteria for collection from chosim that has been sold to a third party is basically a machlekes tanoim. The Mishnah teaches on mitzvah mitzila yishava. If a person, the one who finds a lost item and returns it to the rightful owner, is not required to take an oath that he did not keep any other part of the lost for himself. And this was instituted for the betterment of the world. Now, Rabbi Yisrael says that the owner of the lost item brings a claim against the finder, saying, "You found 2 money pouches tied together that belong to me." The other person says, "I found 1 pouch," and the finder takes a shvuah, similar to anyone who admits he's made the mixes. Now, if you found 2 oxen tied together that belong to me, and the other person says, "No, there's only 1 ox," the finder is not required to take an oath. My time, huh? What's the reason for the difference between the 2 cases? Why he says Shnei by the case of Kshud and Matzasali, and he has the Nishba, and here not. So Shvarim Menachem Adadi, because it's oxen become detached from each other. So it's possible that when the oxen were lost, there had been 2 that were tied together, but afterwards they became separate and they only found 1. But when it comes to pouches, they don't become detached from each other. Since the finder admits that he found 1 of them, it stands the reason that he actually found both of them. Yitzchak also said that the owner of the lost item says to another, that you found 2 oxen, the other person says, "I found 2 oxen, but I already returned 1 of them to you, so how's a nishba?" So the question could be, why doesn't he hold the mitzvah mitzvah? So the Gemara answers and says, he says that there are times when a person takes an oath on his own claim. Who the person says 100 dinars of your deceased father was in my possession, as I had borrowed the sum from him, and I already paid him a pras. Since the finder says that he found only half of what the owner claims was lost, he's treated like somebody who admits the part of the claim and therefore takes an oath. Does he not hold that somebody who returns the lost item is pater? So Marav, he says, B'tainei katan. We're talking about the creditor died, leaving a child as a Yerusha, and this minor confronts the bar and claims 100 dinars from him. The other admits to having borrowed the money, but claims that he already repaid half. Since he admits the part of it, he takes an oath that he did repay the other half. More says, Katan, by a case of a minor, did he learn, does he have any sustenance? One does not take an oath on the time of Cheresh Katan. Or says, my Katan, God, or my Katan, really he's an adult, but with regard to the father's affairs, he's like a minor. He doesn't know with certainly how much money he borrowed, the borrower repaid, but merely says that he thinks that he owes his father more. It's not Tanis Atzmi, it's not Tanis Atzmi, Tanis Achenim, Tanis Achenim, but that's the Gemara answers, Tanis Achenim, Vahidas Atzmi. The claim of others because it's his own admission that obligates him to take a shua. Gemara objects, Kula Tanis Nami. All claims that lead to the oath of one who admits the part of the claim are also a combination of the claim of others that defend and the defendant's own admission. Hello, but why does mitzvah swear? Because in the mayor's pun of Nebachevi. As he says, Rabbi continues, one who admits to part of the claim would want to deny all of them. The only reason he does not deny is because the person will not have to be so brazen before a creditor. And Makula boy delay delay. Had delay delay. Shtamuta come shtamid delay. So Ad have delay. Musus in part delay. Marchmana me. Shua love it. Kelech delay Makula. So again, this one who missed a part of the claim really wants to deny everything. And the only reason why he does not deny it is because a person will not be so brazen before his creditor. And in fact, he would want to admit to all the claim to him. And the reason that he does not admit the whole claim to him and say that in fact he owes in the entire sum is that he was evading his obligation temporarily, and the guy is short of money, and he thinks, I'll pay my creditor as much as I can afford now, and I will evade paying the rest until I have enough money, and then I will repay him to the rest of him. Therefore, the Torah says, impose a shua on him in order to induce him to admit to all of the chayiv to the creditor. Now, Rabbi S Greenwald, there's no difference between the creditor himself and the creditor's son, as in all cases. He won't lie to him, but he'll lie to his son. Since he was not brazen, he's considered like somebody who's being Meshav Aveda.